So the exam regulator Ofqual under fire over the A-level fiasco. Not my word, the word that is all over the papers. Shambles, omni, naughty words, all sorts of things. And lo and behold, on Thursday, they get another go. It's GCSE time as well. Many, many more young people, many, many more subjects, much more complexity. It's all done by Her Majesty's government and Her Majesty's Ofqual and Her Majesty's goodness knows what else, but it ain't looking great. The chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon, is on the line and joins me next. His job, let me just be clear about this before we start the conversation. The Select Committees were set up to keep an eye on how the government is doing its job. They also have huge powers to look at things like Ofqual. That's what they're there to do. Robert, I'm left with an overwhelming sense that Ofqual has shown itself to be not fit for purpose, and that several of Her Majesty's education ministers are in the same bag. What's your view?
Well, I'm beyond comprehension as to what is going on. We read in the newspapers this morning that the Ofqual board, who in some ways are behaving like Vaticans in the Cardinal, choosing their next pope shrouded in secrecy. But what's been leaked is that some of them want to scrap their algorithm so-called standardization model, which they devised. We as a select committee published a report in early July urging Ofqual to publish this model so it could be scrutinized and changed if necessary. We said that the appeal system would be too narrow. We wanted a fairer, wider appeal system that was simple to understand and fair to all. And we said that the model may impact on the disadvantaged. And that's exactly what has happened. And what needs to happen is, I think that the Prime Minister now needs to get up and make it very clear how these problems are going to be resolved for so many students, anxious students and schools across the country.
Should he put somebody else in charge of Ofqual? Should he say to Sally Collier, you've had your go, you're out? And should he say much the same to Gavin Williamson?
Well, I think personalities at this time, you could have Aristotle running Ofqual. I don't think it would make an immediate difference, whoever's in government or running Ofqual. What needs to happen now is to solve the problems. You can have the kind of discussion about personnel and personalities in the future, but what thousands of anxious students want to know is, will the grade system be fair? And there has to be an appeal system. I call it Ronseal, does what it says on the tin, that is second to none, that's simple, that all students should be able to appeal, providing their head teacher signs it off. It should have a fast turnaround. They're going to have to invest in personnel, perhaps retired teachers, Ofsted inspectors to deal with it. But they have to set this out pretty soon. Otherwise, either, as has been suggested, we delay the results to GCSE, which will again cause more anxiety for pupils, or we will have to go down the Scottish route in accepting the predicted grades from the teachers.
Well, I've just been whispered in my ear by Alex, my producer, that's exactly what Northern Ireland have just done and have joined in, and they're saying, right, okay, deep breath, we got to get through this nonsense. We will now accept teacher grades, and actually Chris McGovern from the Campaign for Real Education, I know you have difference of opinions with him on various things, but he did say also the one simple answer right now is teacher certificates signed off, as you yourself said. Let's get on with this, otherwise we're going to be overwhelmed by the second wave, the aftershock of GCSE.
Oh no, I have huge respect for Chris McGovern. He's passionate about standards. We may not agree on everything, but I think unless the appeal system is sorted out in the next 24 hours, and it's fair, and that any student can apply, then we are going to have to go down the Scottish road. But it is unbelievable to read in the newspapers, and I go back to this, that Ofqual board members are considering ditching their model that has caused so many problems for so many people. And the problem with this Ofqual model is that my party, I'm a Conservative, we're supposed to be about individual effort, individual achievement. And what the Ofqual model has done is the algorithm seems to work on the collective memory or history of the school. So it doesn't take into account if in an individual within a class, even if a cohort or the school has been underperforming, it doesn't take into account that individual effort. And we know also, as that I'm very passionate about further education and skills. It's the thing that most motivates me in politics. And this so-called algorithm has hit further education colleges, has hit sixth form colleges unfairly. And the sixth form college head has suggested that the algorithm be amended in terms to make sure it's fair. Whether this can be done or not, I don't know. If it can, that is all well and good. But we've got to have a plan from the Prime Minister as soon as possible that resolves this awful situation we find ourselves, and that thousands of pupils find themselves worrying about their grades and their futures.
I take your point about personalities in your answer to my question about Sally Collier at Ofqual and Gavin Williamson and what have you, but this isn't a silly try and trick him up and try and get a gotcha moment. But is this the right time for the Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, to be having his, I'm sure, well-earned holiday up in Scotland? Should he not delay that by a week until he's sorted this out?
I definitely think that the Prime Minister needs to get up, set out a plan about how we're going to make sure that the A-level grades are fair and that the GCSE grades will be fair when they come out this coming Thursday. And Ofqual, as I say, need to stop behaving like cardinals at the Vatican, shrouded in secrecy, and actually come out and communicate and stop putting things on websites and then taking them down in the space of a few hours. They have enough communications officers in their organisation funded by the taxpayer. What on earth has gone on in that organisation? I do not know. And there needs to be a serious examination, to use a pun, into the way that organisation has worked over the past few weeks, because they just refuse to listen to anyone. I mean, we now know also, not just my Education Select Committee, but the Royal Statistical Society, that are experts in this, offered to help them with their algorithm, and they imposed such significant conditions on their help that the Royal Statistical Society had to say no. And it's beyond comprehension as to what has gone on over the past few weeks. And the problem with all this is it isn't just a bunch of people in government or bureaucrats messing things up. The problem is that this is affecting the lives of thousands of students through no fault of their own, who are worried, understandably, about their future. And it's not just
I also, as you know, I wrote a bit for the Spectator on that point, and just what struck me reflecting upon it was not only what Jill and Johnny get at A-level and what have you. It's the way these and so many of them, bright young men and women, 18, 19-year-old, what they make of how we do things in this country, how something like Ofqual works, how something like the Department for Education works, why we need people like you and the Select Committee to keep them on their toes. It's going to make a lot of those bright kids very cynical about our democracy and our government, Robert.
Well, it is, because we seem to have unaccountable regulators. They're supposed to be independent. I think we need to understand the workings of Ofqual much better, and how it interacts with the Department for Education. I think we will need an inquiry on how these decisions were made, what questions were asked about whether or not the algorithm was fair, and whether or not it would hit disadvantaged students. All these things will need to come out in the wash, but the crucial thing at the moment is to solve the problems, and that's what I'm trying to do as a Select Committee chair, which is to urge for a fairer and wider appeal system. I think that's perhaps the most important thing we can initially do, and then it needs. And if this can't be done, then it will have. I can't see any other. I don't want to go down the Scottish route, because I've always believed in the role of a regulator. I believe should have checks and balances within the system, in the terms of the way that teachers assess grade, because we know actually through surveys that teachers often underpredict disadvantaged students. And so you do need a checks and balance. But in this case, because of their arrogance, Ofqual has refused to listen to anyone and refused to publish their model, which should have been done weeks ago, so it could have been scrutinised by people who know about these and understand about these things and refused to widen the appeal system until the last minute, and that shouldn't have happened. This should have been done, in weeks in preparation of these exams. But we have to solve the problems now in order to help the pupils and students now.
How nervous are you about the return to school in September? I don't mean about health and safety and the rest of it, because I know a lot of work has been done on that. But just generally that it is so important to mums and dads and kids and teachers and heads and what have you. How confident as chair of the select committee are you that something that looks passingly like decent education will be available to all of our young people come next month?
Well, I think that this year will go down in history as a national disaster in terms of education. Despite the remarkable work of many schools and many teachers and support staff, we shouldn't forget support staff, the fact remains that academic studies have shown that 2.3 million children have virtually done nothing during lockdown. We have to get our children learning again. The government, and I want the Prime Minister not just to solve the problems of the exams, but actually to set out a national long-term plan for education, and to know that education, which is the most important engine of social justice and equal opportunity, and skills, and preparing our children for the future. I want to know that Prime Minister that takes education as seriously as he does the economy and health.
Robert Halfon, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm going to be really cheeky and finish by saying, can you put me in your diary for Thursday as well on GCSE day? I'm here from 6:30 until 10, and I will fit round your diary. But is Thursday looking all right?
I'd be delighted, and it'll be a lot easier because at the moment I'm my last day in the Lake District. So I'll have a better signal at home in Essex.
It's a pleasure wherever you are to talk to you, Robert Halfon. Thank you very much indeed, and give my love to Beatrix Potter and all of those lovely things up in the Lake District. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Robert Halfon.